Hello everybody, today I am presenting to you something completely and utterly different that I'm sure no one else has done before. We're talking about Death Battle today, except this time it's going to be Death Battle with a little bit of a twist. And that twist is that we're making our own season, and hey, I like mecha, and I don't want to do shonen right now because there is a lot of fights to do shonen, so I just put in some effort. So basically, one out of at least the two combatants has to be from a mecha TV show, movie, or anything like that. So starting off with the first actual matchup, we have Mazinger Z versus Robo. Now, this would set off as a premiere. Why? I don't know. Because it's really, really good. It's one of the biggest mecha rivalries. Like, as far as the mecha community, everyone who is actually part of it has once thought about, hey, Mazinger Z versus Robo would be pretty cool. And, you know, as far as connections go, it's basically shonen battle manga with giant robots, with hot-blooded protagonists that have sideburns, and combat an evil ancient awakened force. Now, if I had to choose, I would make it original Mazinger Z versus original Robo. Don't do compositing, because that will be brought up later. Now, as far as the fight is concerned, I would probably bet on Mazinger Z, and in order for, I would probably have it set up where Mazinger Z would win, and after that, there would be a end clip where Mazinger Z would be walking away, but then faced with a new opponent. Now, who will this new opponent be? We don't know yet. But, moving on. So, number 2. I'm actually going with one of the more laid-back fights this season. That would be Prowl versus the robot from Pat Labor. Both cybernetic futuristic police officer robots. It would be pretty cool to see, and not much else to it. Alright, next one would be Gunbuster versus Star Driver. These are both cosmic built robots that are primarily used by an organization, and both involve a lot of kicking and are cosmic robots. I kind of struggled with this one, guys. Please don't be mad. Okay, number 4, I have Mech X4 versus Gypsy Danger. Now, this has actually been gaining a decent amount of traction through other forums such as Reddit. I know, Reddit, run from it, you can't escape Reddit. And it seems to be growing more and more popular. But yeah, their similarities are psychically controlled robots that are made by American companies but are heavily inspired by the old mech animes that predated. Next one would be Shinnozen, so 86, versus Armored VR Troopers, or Shiro Voltums. Now, these are two of the most important real robot shows that have come out, and it would be very interesting to see how these two stoic characters bounced off each other. Next up would be the Robotech Valkyrie versus the Zeta Gundam. This is Robotech versus Mobile Suit Gundam Zeta, which would definitely bring in more views than I would say most other matchups on this list. The similarities between them, particularly, I picked out the Robotech version because it is a slightly modified version of the normal Robotech Valkyrie. Just like how the Zeta Gundam is the next evolution of the Gundam. Some people consider it the Gundam Mark II, but the Gundam Mark II wasn't the driving force behind Zeta Gundam, because it's named after Zeta Gundam, and just has more overall presence. Plus, they both have the ability to transform into fighter jets, and that would allow for a fantastic dogfight. Alright, next one is Tetsujin 28 versus Giant Robo. Yes, that is right. The Century Battle. These two are quite literally some of the first mecha shows ever, and they're controlled by a boy with a remote device, and while not necessarily being anything too evil, they can be used for evil and are hunted down by an evil organization in order to use them to help conquer the world. The 00 Gundam versus the Gundam from Gundam Seed. Now, this would end off our halfway point of the season. Technically, it is a halfway point, but I included extra matchups in here just so you could pick and choose what your season would likely be. This would be a hell of a way to end off the season, or the half of the season, and would be very intense. Alright, so after the little break, you would want to bring in people's hype, right? So, what better way to do that than to have Optimus Prime versus Whitebeard? Now, this is a very weird matchup on the surface, but once you dive a little bit deeper, it involves two father figures of their respective groups who have not had the best reputation in the world that belongs to them, in which case the people of Earth normally turn on the Autobots most of the time, and Whitebeard is a pirate feared around the world despite being such a great man. And they both die through trying to save their hot-headed, young, fire-based recruits. One with Ace, and one with Hot Rod, if we're going by the 84 version. Also, Whitebeard is an extremely tall human, which would allow for combat and for fist-to-fist combat, and it not being too off-putting. Next, we're going right to a matchup between gaigar and ggundam. Yes, that is right. Gaigar and ggundam. It would be, their similarities are pretty much hot-blooded martial arts based mecha that premiered in the 90s. This would also draw in a larger crowd, considering Gaigar is actually a very popular mecha anime in the community, and so would bring in a general crowd with that. Next one would be a Code Geass matchup, which is Suzaku Kururugi versus Sosuke Shigara. I just butchered those names, but I've actually seen Code Geass and a little bit of Full Metal Panic. And from what I gather, they're both hot-blooded protagonists that really, really crave justice. And while not necessarily being smart, they are really proficient at the battlefield and do their job better than almost anyone else. After that, we're going to have another Code Geass matchup, which is Lelouch versus Char Aznable. Now, these are both rejected princes who are mastermind tacticians that use the war created to further their goals and eventually murder the group that is currently in control of the world. Now, an interesting dynamic would be seeing how they both arrogantly bounce off of each other, and it would just be a real joy to see. After that, we would be seeing a 2-on-2 battle, but not actually, because it is Renton and Ereca versus Zero Two and Darling, or Hero, or Shiro, or whoever, I forgot his name. No one remembers Darling in the Franxx. But they are both red and white, love-based machines that take part in TV shows that kind of jump the shark towards the end. So yes, it is a very cohesive and vibrant matchup. Next is another matchup between Transformers and Gundam, but this time it is the Gundam 8th MS team versus the Dinobot team. Now, for the 8th MS team, it would include the gun tanks and the specialized mobile suit used by Shiro, against the Dinobots, who would have the ability to combine, and this would just be a really good group fight, I feel, and the thematic similarities actually line up better than you think, because it's a group inside of a larger organization that are generally controversial in the groups that they are part of. And you would look at a good contrast between them, because while the Dinobots they didn't enjoy the war, but they definitely took a major part of it and got very intense with it. Compare that to the 8th MS team, who the captain of the team tried to leave the war as much as he could. So just having that, plus the animation potential is downright insane. You can have Grimlock's fire breath light the forest around on fire as the Gundam pulls out its beam saber. You can have the Dinobots combine into Volcanicus, and then have that fight off and completely destroy most of the team. However, due to their heavier firepower and more emphasis on strategy, they would slowly bring it down, coming down to Shiro versus Grimlock in the one-on-one fight since they're both sword users, surrounded in flames. Something like that would be extremely good looking. Now, we're down to the last couple matches, and for this one, I picked Eva Unit 1 versus the Wing Gundam. Now, this is basically edgy teenagers pilot giant robot during the 90s and are some of the biggest anime to ever come overseas, and are also mecha. Now, why is this right before the finale? Well, because it's most likely that Eva Unit 1 wins. I would comfortably say that. Granted, that's probably controversial, but Eva Unit 1 has some very good feats and has also shown the ability to be around nuclear bomb level, mostly because it fights off kaiju that are that same level. Plus, its AT field is incredibly strong, and in my opinion, I wouldn't have it truly awaken until the final matchup of the series. Now, I'm getting this right out of the way. If this were to happen, Kyle Rayner versus Simone the Digger would obviously be a fantastic matchup, but they can do that any season. This is the mecha season, right? This is the season I made specifically to talk about mecha anime matchups. So what better way than to pick two of the most iconic series and have them go head to head in their both pinnacle forms. So the final matchup is Shin Mazinger Zero versus Awakened Eva Unit 1. Now, these are both mecha that have awakened due to the strenuous effects of their pilot after going through a crazy amount of emotion. However, you can look at the two differences between this, and this also depends on which version. For example, in Super Robot Wars, Koji gains control of Shin Mazinger Zero, and Shinji gains control of his awakened state. However, in their actual movies and manga respectively, they do not, so it would turn into a complete another brawl. Plus, Mazinger Z awakens whenever another super robot challenges it. However, a main component of the story, and spoilers for Shin Mazinger Zero, is that it later finds out that it inspired thousands upon thousands of mecha anime to take to the world. And you can have a fantastic ending where Shin Mazinger Zero realizes that it was the thing that inspired Ava Unit 1's creation, only for it to fade away in its like final breast nova. And the ludicrous animation potential would undoubtedly make that a season finale worthy fight. Alright, I just went through a total of 18 matchups, but I want to know if you guys have any better mecha anime matchups, and if so, please tell me, because I would love to know. And without further ado, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.